welcome to this UK Biobank webinar entitled Dream Big, where we're focusing on UK Biobank's sleep data. We're hugely excited about the new sleep questionnaire data that's been made available recently to UK Biobank researchers, and this is an opportunity to find out more about that questionnaire, which is the largest sleep survey in the world to date. Today I'd like to just introduce the speakers. My name is Martin Rutter. I'm one of the Deputy Chief Scientists. We've got Joe Holliday from UK Biobank, who's been involved in supporting the creation of the questionnaire. So Joe will be taking us through that and the process that we've gone through. And next, after that, we'll go directly into presentations by researchers from the University of Oxford. We have Simon Kyle, who's been instrumental in creating this questionnaire, and Simon will talk about that process and how the questionnaire has been constructed. And then Yuan will go through some of the data, just providing some information about the demographic factors that are related to the sleep traits identified in the questionnaire, just to give you a feel for the sorts of analyses that can be done with this questionnaire. I should mention that there's a question and answer session towards the end, and we'll be giving you an opportunity to put questions in the tab, and we will follow on with a question and answer session. It'll be about 10 minutes or so. I will wrap up at the end and we'll be finished by about 3 o'clock. So very exciting agenda. I'd like to hand over now to Joe Holliday, who will be taking us through how UK Biobank supported the development of this questionnaire. So over to you, Joe.
Thank you, Martin. So before we get into the real meaty stuff that's going to come after me, I'm just going to start today's session by just walking you through the development of our sleep questionnaire, why it was needed, how we designed it, and how we delivered it. So I don't really need to say some of this to many of you who will be watching today, but sleep plays a fundamental role in both physical and mental health, and it impacts everything from cardiovascular risk through to cognitive performance. Yet despite its importance, sleep problems and sleep disorders often go undetected in clinical practice, and they're frequently undermeasured in research cohorts. In UK Biobank, we've captured a limited amount of sleep data over the years, and this has mainly come from primary care records and also questionnaires that participants have completed when they've come to provide data in face-to-face clinic visits. But this wasn't really very comprehensive, and it's become very clear over the years that there's been an increase in sleep disorders, particularly in middle and later life. And it's very, very clear that UK Biobank can contribute to enhancing and expanding our understanding of how sleep interacts with long-term health. So here's a quick timeline of the sleep questionnaire project. It's gone on for quite a number of years, and first conversations happened around 2017, where we started discussing a dedicated sleep questionnaire for UK Biobank. And those discussions revolved around exploring research needs and also possible tools that we could use with our participants. By 2020, development was really well underway, but unfortunately the COVID pandemic shifted the team's priorities, and rollout to other participants were delayed. We managed to get back on track quite quickly, and we prepared to send the questionnaire out to our participants in 2022. And here we are now in 2025, we've at last reached the major milestone, which is releasing the data to researchers. It's important to note that this has not been a linear and simple process. Alongside the pressures and the delays caused by the pandemic, one of the more frustrating challenges that we have had to navigate throughout the process was dealing with the permissions and the licenses that were required to include certain specific validated scales in the questionnaire. And it's a reminder that in projects like this, sometimes the legal and administrative steps that need to be undertaken can be as time-consuming and as hard work as the scientific ones. So developing a high-quality questionnaire like we feel we've done requires high-quality input, and we were really grateful to have the input of a group of sleep researchers from around the world. The questionnaire development group was led by Professor Simon Kyle from the University of Oxford, and he was joined with others from the University of Oxford, from Stanford, from Surrey, and from Imperial College London. This collaboration across institutions and disciplines has ensured that we had a really broad input from both the research and clinical practice, which we feel has really benefited this questionnaire. The questionnaire content. From the outset, it was really clear that there was not a single questionnaire in existence that we could just use with the biobank participants. So we designed our own. It was a modular questionnaire that combined questions that were already in existence along with custom questions that we created ourselves as a team. Some of the instruments we incorporated into the questionnaire were items like the sleep condition indicator, the Berlin questionnaire, the reduced MEQ, the Cambridge Hopkins restless leg syndrome questionnaire, items from the Alliance sleep questionnaire, as well as questions that have previously been used with UK Biobank participants. We also included items that looked at related health domains. So depression and anxiety was captured using the PHQ-4, and we also included the British Columbia Cognitive Complaints Index. The questionnaire was implemented using the University of Oxford's online questionnaire sharing platform, and this allowed participants to provide their data securely using a device of their choice. And it will also allow reuse of some of the items by researchers should they wish to do so in the future. So in terms of how our participants accessed the questionnaire, this followed UK Biobank's usual model for obtaining questionnaire data. Participants were sent an invitation to complete the questionnaire by email, and this email included a personalised web link to the questionnaire that was just for them. And following the invitation, we sent up to 3 reminders over a number of months to encourage participation. If a participant hadn't received an email invitation, for example, if they hadn't registered an email address with UK Biobank, they were able to access the questionnaire by logging into our participant website and completing it through that route. The questionnaire was delivered during 2 phases. We conducted a pilot phase at the end of 2022, which included approximately 13,000 UK Biobank participants, and things went really smoothly, both technically and in terms of content. During the main phase, which started shortly after in January 2023, we received some really helpful feedback, and we were able to make some targeted revisions to the wording of 2 modules. And the details of these changes can be found in the documentation that's available via UK Biobank's data showcase. So once the data's been captured, it was stored securely in our Ingress database. And then as we approached the time to release the data to researchers, it was made available to our data analyst team, who were able to perform QC checks on the data, for example, to ensure that the values fell within the expected ranges, and that the personal information that had been provided by participants on the questionnaire matched the corresponding information that we already held for those participants. They also cleaned and reshaped the data into a format that could be incorporated into the data showcase for dissemination to researchers. And they prepared metadata files to help researchers understand how the data was structured. We also produced user documentation to accompany the data, helping researchers to understand the questionnaire content and also how it was administered. So before I wrap up with my few words, I just want to highlight a data issue that researchers should be aware of about this data set. We have identified an issue where some of the values, about how some of the values are mapped when using the replace coding option. Specifically, some of the values aren't mapping to their corresponding meanings. The good news is that DNA Nexus are aware of the issue and they're working to implement a fix. But in the meantime, we recommend that you use the raw coding option, and then you can manually map the values using the showcase metadata files and ensure that you're using the correct variable labels and interpretations in your work. And more information about this is available on our community forum. So just finally from me, for those of you who aren't aware, UK Biobank aims to administer about 2 questionnaires a year to our participants, and we actively encourage researchers to help us think about the topics of interest that we should ask our participants about. So please do feel free to suggest new questionnaires and new topics that would enhance UK Biobank's dataset. And you can find out more information about this on UK Biobank's community forum. So that's it from me, and I'm going to now hand over to Professor Simon Kyle from the Nuffield Department of Clinical Neurosciences at the University of Oxford.
Hi everyone, nice to be speaking with you. So what I'd like to do is kind of cover 4 main areas. So just expand the background for why the sleep questionnaire really was needed and what it adds. My colleague Yuan and myself will present some preliminary results from descriptive analyses. We'll kind of give you our own reflections on pitfalls, issues when handling the data. We'll tell you about our kind of attempts at deriving sleep disorder case definitions. And then we'll conclude by reflecting on the opportunities of how this data can be combined with other UKB data for added value. I think one thing just to say is that I mean already I'm sure many of you have looked at the sleep data within UK Biobank. From my recent search, there's been about 670 papers published already looking at sleep or circadian rhythms within the UK Biobank. But yet, I think there has been reflections across the sleep field and beyond that it would be ideal to have a more kind of comprehensive characterization of clinical sleep disorders and sleep health dimensions. And this was really the kind of background to developing this questionnaire. So you can see, on the showcase platform, the questionnaire comprises 138 items, 11 separate modules. Where possible, we try to include established measures to capture the majority of the main sleep disorders, as well as other aspects of sleep behavior and sleep and circadian health. And where there weren't measures at that time, we developed our own individual items. And of course, these went under some refinement when they were piloted with UKB participants. So first, I just wanted to make the point, and many of you will know this, who are familiar with working with the showcase, but you can look at the distribution of responses to individual items already. So you can go into the modules, look at individual items, and I'm just going to go through really 4 examples, that kind of reflect the types of data the types of questionnaire data. So you can see here's a question on napping. About 7% of the responders nap or report napping daily, and about a third don't report napping at all. We also asked about use of sleep tracking devices, and bear in mind this was a couple of years ago. Who knows, it may have changed. But intriguingly, about 11% reported using a sleep tracking device on a daily basis. We asked about possible factors that could interfere with sleep onset, sleep maintenance, sleep duration. One of these was in relation to kind of electronic devices. And so you can see from this individual question that about 23% of the respondents use electronic devices in bed, and about 58% within an hour of going to bed. A final example, again, these are just examples. There are 138 items, but a question from the sleep condition indicator asks about the duration of a problem with sleep, beyond any further characterization. But you can see here that about 45% of respondents report having a problem with sleep for more than a year, and a substantial number, about 17%, report having a sleep problem for more than 10 years. But of course, the advantage really is that you can then go in and better characterize the types of sleep-wake complaints and possible caseness for different disorders. I'm now showing you some data that compares the respondents to the sleep questionnaire with those who were invited but didn't respond, and then on your left-hand side, those that comprise the entire UKB cohort at baseline. I'm sorry that the cursor, we don't have a cursor here to point to individual to the individual data. But just in summary, really, that 185,000 people completed the measure. So that's about 54% of those that were invited. So that had, I should say that principally those who had an email address were invited to complete the measure. So 54% completion rate of those invited. The mean age at completion is around 70 years. And I think you can tell from this plot and the next plot, the next table that I'll show you, is that those who completed the sleep questionnaire compared to those who didn't, and indeed the entire UK Biobank cohort, were more likely to be female, have higher levels of education, lower levels of socioeconomic deprivation, and were generally healthier, as reflected in BMI and self-reported health at baseline at the original assessment. So that gives you a sense that overall the responders are somewhat healthier, and from less deprivation backgrounds. Now, there's as Joe said, there's many ways that one can look at this data. You can look at the total scores for the questionnaires. You can look at specific items to index the sleep health of the respondents to the questionnaire. And so this is just one example here, and it's from the Pittsburgh Sleep Quality Index, which is a well-known kind of measure of sleep quality. It contains many components about sleep duration, sleep efficiency, sleep disturbances, sleep quality, sleep medication use. And what I'm showing you here really is a table that shows that on average the respondents' mean PSQI score was around about 6.7. Sleep efficiency was about 79%. About 40% reported sleeping less than 7 hours, 4.5% sleeping more than 9 hours, and about 55% reporting in the kind of 7 to 9 hour range. And from this brief table, you can see that there's evidence of poorer sleep in females versus males, and a somewhat decline, small decline in sleep health with age. Now, there are many ways that one can look at the measures, and one of the principal interests that we've had is how do we derive definitions of possible sleep disorders so that we can look at genetics, imaging, take advantage of all the other data types in UKB. So what we did was we created sleep disorder case definitions based where possible on clinical nosologies, including the International Classification of Sleep Disorders and the DSM-5. We used original scale scoring, validated scale scores where appropriate, where possible, and we brought together a team of about 25, 30 researchers and clinicians to kind of agree the kind of optimal way using the items available to us to define the various sleep disorders. And so I'll now pass you over to my colleague, Yuan, who will present some preliminary findings on the kind of prevalence of these sleep disorders and the kind of patterning of the sleep disorders by various factors. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Simon, for the kind introduction. So what we are really looking at here is to give you a very light touch in terms of the preliminary analysis that we have done in looking at giving people some operationally defined phenotypes that really allow us to understand whether the prevalence of the case distributions across different sleep disorders. And what we're looking at here is to look at the prevalence of different top sleep disorders across age groups and sex. For example, what we see is that for insomnia disorder with chronic insomnia disorder, this is the largest, most prevalent sleep disorder we have amongst the, basing on our operationally defined definition, that about 17% of the younger population with the age of less than 65 years old has chronic sleep insomnia disorder, and whereas about 13 to 14% of the participants of age greater than 65 years have chronic insomnia disorder. And we also included the definitions for other type of disorders such as REM sleep behavior disorder, nightmare disorders that are less common in the general populations for other researchers to look at in greater detail. And we would like to highlight about 70% of the overall participants who had completed the sleep questionnaire were free of all of the listed sleep disorders that we defined here. So it's still largely a healthy cohort we are looking at. But I think by looking at various different kind of sleep dimensions when it comes to sleep health, that really allow us to understand of what does it mean to have a healthy sleep and what does it mean to have some sleep issues. So one of the very interesting set of data that we were very interested in looking into is to understand the comorbidities we have across different sleep disorders. And what is the most notable here is that we find that amongst those who have chronic insomnia disorder, they tend to also have other types of sleep disorders, such as sleep apnea, rest sleep lag syndrome, and shift work disorder. So, and then other than chronic sleep disorders, we also find that obstructive sleep apnea, the people who have obstructive sleep apnea have a higher rate of comorbidity as compared to less common sleep disorders such as restless leg syndromes, which the coexistence of other sleep disorder is much less prevalent. So this really give us a kind of a very powerful vehicle to understand of the comorbidities and coexistence existing of different types of sleep issues that will allow researchers to investigate further. And when we are looking at the sleep midpoint for various different participants that have different kind of disorders, we find that, as expected, participants who have advanced sleep-wake phase disorder have a much earlier sleep midpoint around 2:30 a.m. during the night than as compared to delayed sleep-wake phase disorder participants who have about their sleep midpoint wrangle around 5:30. There is about a 3 hours of difference between their sleep midpoint. And the circles the size of these circles that we're looking at represents the number of cases we have in each sleep disorders. It means that we have more participants who have chronic insomnia disorder as compared to other type of sleep disorders that we're looking at here. And the majority of the participants, regardless of what the type of sleep disorder they have, tend to have a sleep midpoint around 3:30, meaning that their sleep timing didn't differ too much, regardless of their sleep disorder subtype, other than an advanced sleep-wake phase disorder and delayed sleep-wake phase disorder. And what's really nice about the sleep questionnaire was that we are also giving us the a multi-dimensional view of different types of the sleep condition, including looking at the P-sleep sleep quality index that we are looking at here. That we see that for among the participants who have a higher P-sleep score, it means that they have a worse of a sleep quality, and then that we see the participants who have the highest PSD score are from those who have chronic insomnia disorder, whereas we see that for people who have advanced sleep-wake phase disorder, they have a lowest value. And I think, but the intervals of the distribution of their PSD score is about 6 per subtype. It means that we do have a relatively large heterogeneity among different sleep disorder subtype. I think that requires a further investigation. Now, one other powerful instrument that we look at is to asking about whether people have taken sleep medications at least once a week at the time of the sleep questionnaire. And what we are seeing here is that the ratio of the participant who have been taking regular sleep medications. And what we see here is that roughly among all the participants who have about who have been defined to as a case for different sleep disorder, there is only about 10% of the participant reported to be taking medications. And for people who have advanced sleep circadian disorder, they have half of that ratio. And I think this is also another angle that allow us to understand in terms of whether the appropriate interventions were taken to help people to mitigate their own sleep issues. Well, the sleep questionnaire dataset, it's giving us a very wide bird view of different sleep health and sleep conditions. It's actually incredibly difficult to code up a functional, workable data set for us to do the downstream epidemiological or genomic analysis. And for the reasons listed here, First of all, because of the need of encouraging multi-participants to fill in the questionnaires, so we have to, as part of the questionnaire collection, we also have to enable the participant to fill in prefer not to answer, very significantly do not know, and not applicable as responses to different set of questions. And then because of the ambiguity those responses introduce, we have to be extremely careful into defining what is a case and what constitute a control and what constitute a missing in each of the phenotype that we are going to define. And I think that concerns not just the case control phenotype, it concerns all the different questions that we think about. And when researchers are working with the data set, we encourage people to rethink carefully about how do they deal with those different kind of responses for the set of the questions that they're going to use. And secondly, one of the particular issue we find out about some of the sleep timing related variable was that some of the participants might have entered their sleep timing incorrectly because of the confusion for the 24 hours and the 12-hour time format. So if you are interested in working with the sleep timing measures, it's important for you to look more closely into whether the sleep timing variables would have population phase validity. And finally, when we are dealing with missing data and of course different questionnaires, some of the questions are only answered based on your responses to a previous question. So we also realized it was quite important to understand the dependencies of each of the questions, so we can come up with a appropriate definition for each of the phenotype and control that we just showed to you just now. And finally, this particular questionnaire is just really a starting point to help us understand the holistic understanding of sleep health and sleep disorders. And because of the other enhancements we have in the UKB, such as the genomics and the proteomics enhancement, the imaging enhancement, which understand the relationship between sleep and brain health, other type of self-reported questionnaire like mental health and dietary, and also potentially relevant is on the accelerometer enhancement in 100,000 participants, or the upcoming wearable ECG data for 14 days that really give us a different angles of sleep coming from self-report and device measure to look at sleep health either both as an exposure or as an outcome for people to investigate. Now, I'm going to pass back to Martin to help us to chair the Q&A session.
That's great. Thank you very much, Hang, and thanks to Joe and Simon as well for that very nice overview of the questionnaire. What we're going to do now is to go into a question and answer session. I'm grateful to those people that have put questions in the chat already, but the chat box is still open, so you're very welcome to put additional questions in. So I'd like to start with some of the questions that have been asked by people who've been taking part in the webinar. So the first question comes from Ingrid Buller Peralta, and she asks about were there any inclusion or exclusion criteria for the participants assessed with the questionnaire? And I was hoping that Joe might be able to answer that.
Yeah, no, there weren't. The only exclusions were if people had requested that they weren't contacted about completing questionnaires or had some other flag on their record, which meant that we didn't make the questionnaire available to them.
Yeah. UK Biobank participants are, hugely altruistic individuals, and they've have very high rates of completing these questionnaires. How does the completion of this questionnaire compare with others, Joe, in your experience?
It's about the same as some of our recent ones, which kind of are around kind of 50-ish%. As Simon said, it's about 54%. But we've been getting similar kind of questionnaire responses for the past maybe six or so questionnaires that we've done.
Yeah, that's very helpful. And is the questionnaire still open? One of the questions came in from the audience.
Yes, it is.
Okay, that's great.
But it'll only be being completed by obviously people who haven't done it before. It's still available to them, but we're only actively inviting people to complete it who have not previously had an email address registered with us.
Yeah.
So if they give us a new email address now, then we will actively invite them, but otherwise it's just there on the portal for people to find.
That's very helpful. Thanks, Jo. A question has come in about what results have surprised you most. I think this is to Simon and to Hang. Now, of course, our researchers have yet really to get the teeth into the data properly. The analyses that have been done by Simon and his team and Hang are really just to provide an overview of the data and to generate some of these phenotypes. But there may be some surprises. I was a bit surprised about the proportion of people who were using devices before they went to bed. But of the data that's been looked at so far, do you have any particular surprises, Simon and Hang?
Simon, would you like to go first?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think I would just say, kind of echo what you said, Martin. I mean, I think we've been looking for reassurance that our case definitions make sense. And Hang, I think Hang, your mic's open. Yeah. So sorry. So I think Hang illustrated it well with the timing variable. Obviously, we didn't use the sleep timing, measure that he presented in the definition, but still we showed that the kind of difficulties with being able to sleep either late or very early or rising very early mapped onto the midpoint of sleep. So that was reassuring, as was the kind of the expected patterning of kind of socio-demographic variables across the sleep disorders. I mean, Hang also presented the level of sleep medication use, which you can see is about 1 in 10 for insomnia disorder, but actually was about 4% in the total sample, which was higher, I should say, than the baseline cohort. But of course, that was 14 years earlier. Participants were about 14 years younger. I think, as you say, that it's quite interesting. Some of the things that we didn't show, around, what factors people make attributions to in causing sleep issues like worry or pain. So you can look at the kind of the proportion of the population that endorses sleep disturbance because of particular factors, which isn't always captured in large cohort studies. But no, I think the principal thing is be the kind of reassurance that the case definitions generally make sense. And beyond that, being able to describe the population across multiple dimensions of sleep and circadian health has been a strength, I think. There were some other findings about family history, which we haven't went into, but that I think people will find interesting. We didn't present it today, but I think that's interesting across disorders, but also, as Hang said, the kind of co-occurrence between disorders, which, because few studies have been able to look multiple definitions of sleep disorder in the same study. That hasn't really been well described before. So as far as I understand, so I think that's also interesting. So more interesting reflections rather than absolute surprises, I would say. I'm sorry, I passed to you.
Yeah, I agree with everything you've said. I think I do have noticed something surprising, and that's on the sleep efficiency measurement. because based on the self-reported seed efficiency, it is surprisingly similar to the seed efficiency that we were able to derive from the accelerometer, the actigraphy, around the population mean around 80%. Because usually we should see large disparity when it comes to self-reported seed duration, seed efficiency as compared to actigraphy or accelerometer measured seed efficiency and seed duration. But in terms of the first look, they are actually closer, much closer than I expected. So I think that was the biggest surprise I have had so far.
Yeah. Thanks very much to both of you for that response. And in fact, it sort of links to another question that's come in about wearable data. And the question is about how reliable the self-reported measures are compared to objective. Do you see it as a comparison, or how do you view the data that we generate from wearable devices? So can we expect to see one-to-one correlations, or are we sort of measuring different things? It'd be interesting to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, Simon, would you? I'll go ahead because this is my area of research. So I work on wearables to measure sleep measurement with Simon and Aidan for the past few years. To me, I think the wearable and device measurements they really give us a sort of a kind of a correlated, but also correlated but information, but also orthogonal information, because sleep health and sleep disorder is so multi-dimensional. We can't say that even though I think the gold standard for measurement is polysomnography in the clinical settings, right? But other than that, any other type of sleep measurements are from devices. They give us something more to give us the context. So if we want to investigate sleep, we should take all the instruments we have instead of relying on a single measurement.
And just to follow up on that too. I mean, I think I would agree, and it's an important point that the questioner may be getting at here, is that for many sleep disorders, one needs a full clinical workup, a laboratory PSG assessment to confer a diagnosis. So this is why we're very careful. These are possible cases or probable cases when our strength or our confidence in the measurement is a bit stronger. But in themselves, for many of the disorders, aren't sufficient to say that person has a disorder. So that's an important point to make. But yes, I mean, obviously, certain self-report elements are just probing different aspects of sleep relative to some of the polysomnography and indeed actigraphy or other wearable devices. And I think we would argue that a multidimensional assessment of sleep in an ideal world would include a combination of measures and also a thorough clinical assessment to be confident that one is either experiencing a particular sleep disorder or that there's actually meaning in the difference between the measures, and that may also be something that could be understood here, perhaps help us understand why particular populations may have a greater or less discrepancy between different measures. I think could be interesting. I think it's an important multi-level question.
Yeah, thanks so much, Simon. We've had another question here about linkage to other data sets within UK Biobank, and I might bring Joe in here just to talk about the data that we can potentially link to, because we've got a wealth of data on biobank participants. But the question was really about genetic data. Do we have a way of checking genetic associations with these sleep health data? So it'd be nice, Joe, if you could maybe just give us an overview of the sorts of data that we can link to because of the nature of UK Biobank. This is one of the absolute strengths of the data being in the biobank population.
Yeah, absolutely, it is. And I mean, I'm involved in the collection and the curation of the data rather than using the data. So Simon and Hank will certainly be able to expand on how the data can be used and the value that it can add to research. But Biobank holds a wealth of information from the genetic data through to data that we've collected from participants directly over the years. We have data that have been collected from multiple different kinds of questionnaires on mental health. I've noticed a question in the chat about fibromyalgia as a sleep disorder. We actually captured information on fibromyalgia in a previous questionnaire on pain, which was conducted in 2019. So even just looking at the self-report questionnaire data that we've done using online questionnaires, there are a huge number of variables that you could look at and link together to look at sleep problems and sleep disorders and the association between different issues. But then we've also captured self-reported health and health behavior data in clinic kind of environments at our baseline assessment, and then at multiple time points through over the past 10 years or so in our imaging visits, and also a small scale and repeat assessment that we did. We have imaging data, multimodal imaging data, looking at various parts of the body, as well as measures that have been taken from blood samples that we've taken from our participants over the years. So it's an enormous wealth of data that's all linked together and that can all be used for research into sleep disorders and sleep problems. So I don't know if Simon and Hang want to just take a specific example of a way that the data could be used, just to expand on what I've said.
Yeah, I mean, I think I mean the you know, the 700 papers or so that I talked about earlier that have already looked at different aspects of sleep and circadian health already in the UK Biobank, much of that could be repeated or could be extended, and or to enrich some of those initial analyses, because I think the challenge has been obviously with the self-report data, you get a large number of people. The more objective measures more in a subset, and so we know, working with colleagues, that there's work has commenced looking at the genetic underpinnings or architecture of the range of sleep disorders that hasn't really been done for many of the disorders. In fact, for many of the case definitions, my own particular group has got interest in neuroimaging outcomes in relation to insomnia disorder and sleep health, and so with the improved definition, improved modelling of potential confounding variables, co-occurring sleep disorders and their interactions, I think that we might be able to get a better understanding of the changes in brain structure and function, for example, in association with sleep disorder pathology. But there, I guess one thing I would say is to invite you to explore the showcase and yeah, unleash its potential really, because there's a lot of different types of data, a lot to be tackled really. Hang, over to you maybe.
Yeah, I'm just gonna give a very short one. I think both Simon, you and Joe have already given us great examples. I'm just gonna talk about one that's not available yet with the wearable ECG, which is basically a 14 days of wearable ECG, chest worn, about I think 10,000 plus participants. I think that really give us the understanding the sleep staging and the move and then people's movement activities and how that affects sleep quality and duration at scale, right? And I think that's something that will be very good to keep an eye on for the next year if that's coming.
Yeah, that's great. And I think there are massive opportunities with the genetic data. We can understand the biology of sleep disorders. We've got proteomic data, metabolite data as well, which will again give us insights into the sort of the biology of these conditions. And by understanding the genetic underpinnings of these conditions, we can do Mendelian randomization studies, which will help us to understand causal relationships between these particular sleep traits and other outcomes. So I think there's massive opportunity for the linkage that we have available in UK Biobank. I'm just going to cover, if I may, just one more question, because we need to finish at 3 o'clock, and there's a few comments I just want to make about UK Biobank in general before wrapping up. There's a question here that I think is perhaps best handled by Simon. So did you deliberately release the questionnaire during the dark days of winter, and did it include questions about seasonal variation? So I don't know if you're happy to handle that, Simon.
So I'll defer to Joe in the precise timing of the questionnaire, but I think the collection period was over. Was it 6 months, Joe? I don't know. Well, it's still ongoing, but you know, the majority.
Yeah.
You can answer that. But on the other point around, we do have questions. We replicated some of the questions that were there in previous UKB assessments. That, for example, the baseline assessment that asked about hours of sunlight during summer and winter, and actually there's some interesting findings in relation to sleep timing disorders that emerged from at least our initial look at those data. But Joe, I mean, there was no strategy around the
No.
as far as I understand the timing of the questionnaire.
No.
Yeah.
No, there wasn't a strategy. It was just, you know, opportunistic really, that was when the questionnaire was available to go live. We, as I said when I went through my slides, we administered the questionnaire to about 13,000 participants in December 2022, and then recommenced administration in the January. I think we probably sent out about 60,000 in January. We don't send questionnaires out like all of them on one day. They tend to kind of go out at a rate of 10 to 30,000 a day. So administration does take a number of weeks usually, and that'll just be the first invitation going out, and then it's followed up by a reminder to people who hadn't completed the questionnaire, reminders to people who started it but didn't finish, and then finally finishing up with a final reminder kind of 2 to 3 months after it was first sent out. So we were looking at, realistically, the questionnaire was we were getting responses in, yes, through the winter, but certainly into spring of 2023. But no, it was not deliberately done in the winter for any particular reason other than operational reasons from our perspective.
That's great. Oh, thank you very much indeed for just covering that question, Joe and Simon. We're approaching time. I'm just going to just thank the presenters, Joe, Simon and Hang, for giving us such a comprehensive overview of this questionnaire. Huge congratulations to the team really for pulling this off. It's been, 7 or 8 years in the making, a labour of love, but it is an amazing resource for our researchers, the largest sleep survey in the world to date. And I'm sure the value of this questionnaire will become apparent over the years to come as our researchers get into the data. We got insights into new sleep phenotypes that we didn't have access to using the previous sleep questionnaire, and we got direct links within the questionnaire to mental health and cognition outcomes, which is going to be so valuable. And as I mentioned before, we've got the linkage to the genetic data, the proteomics, the metabolite data for biological insights, and the genetic data as well will give us deep insights into causal relationships as well. So that, along with the imaging, we've got the largest imaging study in the world. It's an absolute treasure trove of data for our researchers. So huge congratulations to the team for pulling this off, and thanks to the presenters once again. I'm going to move on and just say a few words finally about UK Biobank and accessing the data. For those of you who are Biobank setup, the data is available to any bona fide researcher based anywhere around the world. The fee structure is given in this slide here. For the most straightforward EPI type studies, we're looking at about £3,000 for 3 years of data access. For the complete data, which involves whole genome sequencing data, exome sequencing and some of the other omics data and imaging data, we're looking at a maximum of £9,000 for 3 years of data access. So that is basically the overview of the pricing structure. So really very competitive rates. We have a degree of support for researchers now. Our data is made available through our research analysis platform, and we have a set of credits. This is designed to stimulate researchers from low and middle income countries. So junior researchers can get credits to support the costs of doing the analysis on the research analysis platform. And in fact, any new project is now eligible for £1,000 of support. And for many of the projects, that will be sufficient to cover the whole of the data analysis. But for the people doing genome-wide association studies and using the whole genome sequencing data, for example, that funding could be very valuable. We've got a global researcher access fund, which is again designed to stimulate increased uptake from low and middle income countries. So really like people to take advantage of those opportunities. We have a new look UK Biobank community, which is designed to support researchers who are doing work using our research analysis platform. So we've got lots of data describing how to use the resources of UK Biobank. There's a community forum, questions can be posed. They may be answered by our research team, but they're also often answered by the community itself. So there's a body of researchers building up a bank of responses to specific questions that are common to many of those researchers. So that's another great development for UK Biobank. And finally, I'd just like to say we'd really like to get some feedback on how this webinar has gone from your point of view. We're very keen to make sure that these webinars are delivered in a way that's most useful to you, so please give your feedback. There's a QR code there that you can use to provide that feedback. So I think that's all I wanted to say. We're pretty much at time now. Thank who've given us a really beautiful overview of the questionnaire. It's a wonderful resource, and we're very keen to promote its use across the world. So thank you very much indeed for attending this today.